Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, I was hoping you'd all join in. Excellent. Well, goedemiddag. Welkom bij Amsterdam. That's it. That's all the Dutch you're going to get from me, because as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm very British, although I have chosen to come and live in this wonderful land. So, my name is Kat Young, and I'm here to talk to you about how to scale sales enablement. But I want to ask you a question, which is really interesting, because as the day has progressed, we've done loads and loads of talking and ideas sharing. So this sort of might seem a little bit unnecessary, but bear with me. Think back through everything we've done today, everything we've spoken about, everything that you've learned, and write down the single biggest challenge that you're facing in your sales enablement teams. Pick the one thing that you think is really going to move the needle for you when you get back to your teams and your companies. It could be small, it could be big, it could be simple or complex, but I just want you to jot it down. And we will come back to this at the end, because my job today, as I am the one standing between you and the beer, is I need to make this as interactive as possible. So we are going to have a lot of audience participation, which is why you should have been dancing when you had the opportunity. But please, as I said, write it down and we'll come back to that. Oh, I have another interesting fact as earlier. This is the first time I've done a presentation since I've had to wear glasses, where I need glasses for distance and short sight. So if I fall off the stage, can someone just come and pick me up? Because at the moment I'm a little bit sort of, but we'll cope. So I wanted to tell you my story. I wanted to tell you my story into sales enablement because I think it will illustrate some of the whys of what I did when I scaled sales enablement in my career. So in a minute, I'm going to ask for your contributions to scenarios that I was facing around scaling sales enablement, and then I will reveal how we went about it. And so knowing a little bit about the history, how I got to where I am today, might help to inform that. But here's another hint. All of the answers have actually been revealed today. We have spoken about all of the solutions and all of the secrets to scaling your sales enablement. So if you've been paying attention, you're going to find this really easy. I started my career, in fact, I have always spent my career at the interface between human and technology. So thank you, Britta, for introducing the word human right at the start of today. That is where I exist. That's where we all exist. My first proper job after I graduated was in IT support. I smile immediately because it goes back such a long time that we were helping customers with the software we were building and with the technical issues they were having with their computers. And that was done by telephone. There was no such thing as email support or internet support or chat. It was just telephone. But we had one other thing in our arsenal, the postal service. If you wanted to do an upgrade to your software, you would phone us up and we'd say, not a problem, we'll pop it in the post on a floppy disk. In fact, a pile of floppy disks, usually. If anyone's not laughing, that's because you're too young. You don't even know what I'm talking about. So that's all right. So IT support. So really the challenge there was about how to provide a consistent customer experience as we grew the company. The company had mergers and acquisitions and organic growth, and therefore the support team went from 6 to 32, and I was managing that support team. But all that time you had to try and keep customer satisfaction levels high. But we're talking about in the early 90s. So we haven't got the technology stacks that we've been talking about today. We don't have the processes, the automation that we have today. So what we had to do is we had to create process, be it manual, to create that consistency, to have that predictability for the customer, to know that the service they were going to get from us remained high. And as the team grew, but as the customer demands grew, what we also needed to do was make sure that where we were providing that support, that human contact with our customers, that needed to add value. So what could we do to take away from the front line any of the administrative tasks, any of the sort of CRM processes or anything to do with that call management? So we automated where we could. After that, I spent some time as a business analyst. I also was in business development. And then I set up my own business. We created a company that built websites for local UK organisations. And we're talking about the early 2000s now. And so we created software, we built software that enabled our customers to maintain their own websites. Again, some of you are going to be like, duh, because WordPress exists, or other content management systems, but back then they didn't. People had websites built, but they weren't allowed to maintain it themselves. We thought that was BS, and we decided to allow customers to do that for themselves. But once we built websites, our customers weren't using them. They were just a tool. And we mentioned earlier, tools are just technology. A fool with a tool is still a fool, which I've pinched off somebody else, I'm afraid, but I really like it. And so our customers need to learn how to market themselves using those websites. So we evolved into a digital marketing agency, which meant that we were helping them with everything from SEO to blogging to newsletters to social media marketing when it got invented, through to anything to do with a technological solution that we could introduce to help with their business needs. And the theme behind everything that we did, though, was that it was all about self-help. If they could do it themselves, then we would encourage them to, so either through the technology or through training. And as a business owner, as a business owner, it is a necessity to be agile and innovative and sort of get things done attitude, because you have no one else to rely on. So you have to do this, but you're doing it on behalf of your customers as well. So it's a very exhilarating place to exist. And in our world, we had this thing called brand spirit, and I think it really encapsulates something that we're all, I think, driven by as sales enablers. We have at the core of our very being the desire to be sustainable problem solvers. We don't like to fix a problem once. We like to do it in a way that lasts a long time. And then our passion, the thing that gets us out of bed in the morning, is to have a positive influence on the people, a positive influence on the things that we do, but also on the businesses that we work for. And then we had a motto, the goal that we were aiming for, and it was really simple. It's sorted. That was what drove everything that we did in our small business. So I took those same characteristics into corporate world. Why not? Why not go from a very small business into a massive organisation? And talk about scaling up. I started with Xerox in 2014. So I went from a turnover of hundreds of thousands to billions. I had a staff of 5 working for me in my business. And then I'm now faced with 10,000 salespeople who I have some influence over, but certainly no authority over. And they had different roles. They were either direct sales or channel sales. They were working for our channel partners. They could have been business development. They could have been account managers, different go-to-markets, different lines of business. Whew, there's a lot. And I know we talked a bit before about how do you influence all these groups. But it was great fun. But the key really there was about automating where possible, using technology to support and to personalise everything that we do in order to make it relevant, make it stick. Because when you are HQ in a global role with all these different units, you can't do everything on a one-to-one basis. You can't do everything manually. It is physically impossible. And then I left Xerox and came here to the Netherlands 10.5 months ago to work at Worldline. And the challenges here are really interesting because they're different, but also the same. The reasons are different. So what I'm faced with now is more of a challenge around rapid growth, both in the business and in the sales team. So that's where the scaling up is required. The fact that very soon we're going to have a big influx of people. And then sorry, I lost my thread slightly. So scaling up is the challenge here. But I'm still working with all those different roles and still in a global organisation. So people are scattered across the world. So that brings us to here and now, to today. So what I'm going to do now is share with you 3 scenarios, one at a time. I'm going to explain briefly the scenario in 1 sentence, and then I'm going to ask you to help me solve that problem. So you treat it like a role play, an imaginary situation, however you want. If you want to, you can ask me questions to clarify the understanding. Then we'll have a little bit of brainstorming, and then I'll reveal what I did. It'll be really interesting to see how those 2 things match up. But the most important thing is I'll also reveal the impact this had on the business and why scaling up can be a driver for growth for your organisations. Okay. Tool adoption. It was mentioned earlier, I think, as well. Sometimes we have too many tools in the organisation. Sometimes we have simple tools, but we don't have full engagement from our salespeople. So this story is actually about Showpad. In Xerox, we had 4,500 licenses of Showpad and deployed globally. And we thought it was fabulous, and we had brilliant demonstrable KPIs about the impact that the software had on our sales performance. But we still had some lagging within certain groups. So in this case, it was the US enterprise sales team, the direct sales team. There was about 450 people in that team. And for 6 months, we'd got the adoption rate at about 20%. So 20% of that population was using the tool. Some of them using it a lot, some of them not, but at least they were using it. Nobody else was touching it. And the manager of that platform at the time would send out emails, would turn up to sales meetings and do presentations. And she was like banging her head going, why isn't everybody taking part? So how would you drive the adoption up from 20%? In this case? Ideas?
Deprecate other sources.
Could you, sorry, just say it a bit louder because I'm also a bit old.
Deprecate other sources.
Deprecate other sources. Just elaborate a little bit for us.
So we have a similar situation where we have Confluence pages full of information.
Yep.
Maintained by different teams, people.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically killed those pages
Right.
or made them only visible to the internal team.
So you did an effort to actually pull it all into the one space so that they had no other choice.
Yes.
Oh, sort of a stick option, I think, rather than a carrot. But yeah, no, I like it.
Ask the 20% who are using it why they're using it.
Ask the 20% why they're using it. Yep.
Or the 80% why they're not.
80% why they're not. Okay.
Adoption games.
Adoption games. Ooh, tell me about an adoption game.
Well, we also use Showpads, and we saw that the adoption was growing, but not as fast as we wanted to. So we did a Easter egg hunt on the platform, and each Easter egg had a letter, and they had to guess a word, and they could win Airbnb experience.
Wow. Can someone write that one down for me, please?
I get from Showpad actually, my CSO.
And did it work?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, let's see a good peek.
Super.
Then after it's
So,
kind of like faded out again.
so an Easter egg hunt where they had to go onto the platform to find the letters. If they made the word, they got the prize. Is that called bribery? Yeah. Okay, cool. As long as we're on the same page. Gamification. Okay, and gamification is different from the game because...
No, it's bribery.
Oh, it's still bribery. So, well, I think gamification is also about competition, isn't it? It's about showing your leaders and showing your laggards and that. Yep, great. Other ideas?
Using people from other sales teams that are using it, having them talk about what they gain.
So, real salespeople in real scenarios sharing their stories with your team, even if they're from another company. Brilliant, thank you.
More value.
More value. And you mean show more value?
Yeah, so delivering better quality content just within that tool.
Yeah, okay, so the quality will become a lighthouse and will bring people towards it. Okay, great. And the lady behind you?
Making the usage to a daily habit.
Making the usage into a daily habit. And how would you encourage people to create that daily habit?
Communicating regularly by the management, including it really into the day. So when you join office, in general, you see something on the wall. Or
Yeah.
So how to include it really into the daily work. If it's not by joining office, how to bring it to the maybe computer when you write on your computer. Maybe having something next to your desk that you see every day.
Yeah.
Small checklist combination with gamification, make it a real habit.
So may I summarise and see if I'm right? So anything that brings it into their daily lives, so physically in front of them or next to them, on the wall, and is that because it's for them personally or is it for everybody to see?
Good question. Might be both.
Okay. Could be for both cases. And just to explain myself, I'm repeating what you're saying so that everybody can hear as well. So I'm not. Any other ideas? Yes, please.
Integrations.
Integration.
Tools they're already using.
Excellent.
Like CRM.
Yeah, especially the CRM. And that's predicated, so integrating to the CRM is predicated on the idea that you've got a good adoption of your CRM, because it could be the CRM that's actually the tool that you're struggling with. But I accept that that's a good point. And
I think also setting expectations of how you want them to use the tool, because there's so many options in technology platforms that it's a little bit of a maze, and there's so much that I don't know what to focus on. So, yeah.
Setting the expectations of how they want to use it, because there's so many other tools to choose from, and that was particularly relevant, I think, in the channel sales environment, because they're their own companies. These are channel partners who run their own companies. They have their own tools and their own CRMs, and then we come along and go, "Oh, we've got this great thing called Showpad. Do you want to use it?" And they're just like, but once you can get over that, then yeah, it makes more sense. Please.
I would also go back at the beginning and think why we chose this tool, what was the original objective to bring this tool on board, and actually see whether this tool is irrelevant and not being adopted for a real reason, and fix that reason, because maybe you chose the wrong tool. Maybe.
Ooh. Okay, so you were saying go back to the original intention and check that you've got the right tool for the job and that it's actually achieving something that the salespeople need it to achieve.
Exactly, and it's more of sharing my experience. Actually did implement the wrong tool like this. Because I thought it was a good idea, a bunch of people involved thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Nobody checked with the salespeople whether it was a good idea.
Yeah.
So the adoption failed.
Yeah. That actually, so that's really interesting because truthfully, this was slightly imposed. But it was imposed because we did the pilot and it worked. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like we just made it up. But then the rollout was something that we had to push from the central sales enablement team and make it happen for it to truly have value, because it then meant that we had a lot of salespeople using this fabulous tool. And you may have worked out from my timeline, this is going back a few years as well. So again, we may not have had as many choices. Really good ideas, thank you everyone. Let me share with you what we did. So I think you've pretty much hit upon most of the key things, but I'll go through a couple of them. So we had a multi-touch point or omni-channel campaign. One of the things that's driven everything that I do in sales enablement was that I was that marketeer, remember? So I think like a marketeer. I think about personalizing the content. I think about one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many communications. I think about AIDA, all these things that if you're a marketeer, these should be singing to you. So I treat my salespeople like an audience, and then I try to apply marketing tactics on them. And so the thing was a campaign. It wasn't a one-hit wonder. It started with leadership, and I mean senior leadership, so that the lines of business CEOs. So these are people who basically were responsible for the whole P&L for that part of the business. I'd go that high up and engage them and convince them first. But the beauty of that was that once I got their engagement, I was able to use their sponsorship in the campaign. So the first email that went out actually came from the sales leader, came from their email address. I didn't just mention the name, it actually came from their email address. It had their picture in it. It said, I endorse this product. I want you all to use this. I mean, that's so much more impactful than just an email from the little old me at HQ saying, I think this is really great. And we used Marketo. I said I was a marketeer, so we used Marketo to run this. So we could see who opened the email. If they didn't open it, it automatically got sent another chase-up. If they didn't open that after another 5 days or whatever, an automatic chase-up went out. I didn't do those chase-ups, the system did. But also, once we got them engaged, once they said, yes, okay, I'll have a license, everything from that point forward was automated and personalised. So personalised to their role, personalised, if they haven't got the license, they were getting this set of emails. If they have signed up but have not yet used it, they got this email, and so on. And the beauty of this is you design it once and then it keeps looking after itself. And that meant we could do those personalised follow-ups and nudges. But the next point is really important. The dynamic dashboards for managers. This has been mentioned a bit earlier. The importance of the line manager in getting enablement initiatives over the line. So we were able, with some nice, easy charts, to say who has got a license and who hasn't got a license. And remember, their big boss has told them this should happen. They were on it. They were nudging and chasing and following up and doing all that. We didn't have to do anything. We just gave them the tools, we gave them some training and some coaching, but then we left it to them. And somebody mentioned earlier about success, sharing your success from other teams. Well, we made sure we did that from within the Xerox teams as well. It's so funny though, we'd always get somebody who goes, but they have a very different sales situation than we do. I'm not a channel salesperson, I'm a direct salesperson. And you're like, yeah, all right. But we managed to get over that with some imaginative storytelling. So the good news is that it works. And this is on my CV, right? Because this, I think, is fabulous. The adoption went up to 80% within 6 weeks. And it could be that fast because it was all automated. And it didn't quite stay at 80%, I will admit. It came down a little, and you were saying, but it stayed high. It stayed way above our target. Our target was 50%, I think. And we were sort of like 68 to 75%. So it works. Cool. Thinking caps on again. Next challenge. Wasting money on content. I was asked by our CMO, we're spending too much money on content. I need to know what to stop producing. Big ask, because the salespeople, whenever we spoke to them, said, oh no, it's brilliant. Love all the content that you've got. We had 80,000 assets in 22 languages on multiple platforms. Don't kill me. That was just the reality of the situation I was in at the time. But they kept saying, oh yeah, but this one, I use this one to close this big deal. You can't take that away. And oh, I use this all the time. It's really important. Or the product marketeers or the product managers were just as bad. Oh, it's vital. I put my lifeblood into creating that for the salespeople. Please don't take it away. But I'm under pressure to reduce the spend. Oh, so what's your ideas? Ideas for how do you find out what content you can get rid of, basically.
If you have a system like Showpad or Seismic or Highspot, there's actually reports built in.
Yep.
So
that makes it a lot easier. Again, go back a few years and then you'll find out we didn't have that at the time. I'll tell you why. We had the multiple platforms, and yes, I know it is the devil in sales enablement, but we did, and we tried really hard to overcome that. We couldn't. We did have multiple platforms. So it wasn't quite as straightforward as that, but thank you. So that was whether I could use Showpad or Seismic or Highspot. Other ideas, please.
Sessions where you bring sellers together and make them go through that exercise where they are given the task. You will need to do, you have to do X. What is it?
I love the strength of character in this room. So you're saying, get the salespeople down, sit them down, say, you have to do this, you choose. Or I'll choose. It's a very parental way of doing it, isn't it? It's like, if you don't choose, I'm going to choose for you. Yeah. Fair enough. I like it. Please, over there.
You could try something like a max quantitative survey? Like I've never thought about running one for a sales team, but it's the kind of one you would run for a customer where you say, you know, you give them a list of features and you would say,
Yeah.
what do you value most, what do you value least?
Yeah.
You could do that for all of your content and just have them paired in different orders and see what people value most, what they value least.
So do a survey, give them the list and ask them to value it, and make sure they had to choose, and do things like order them 1 to 10. So they can't say yes to everything. They have to put it in order, which is a bit like you were saying, but in a survey form. Okay, I will let you into a secret. We did do that. It's not in my answers because they wanted everything, effectively. Or ones, you know, it was really hard to, even with that 1 to 10 grading, it was really hard to quantify how much money we could save if we did it that way as well. But good idea, thank you. Yes?
So if you have the data, look at it from the customer perspective. So
Yeah.
which pieces of content are actually activating your customers?
So look at it from the customer's perspective. Which pieces of content are activating the deal and the customers? You're absolutely right. Although we had show pads, that was only one of the platforms, so we could only get a certain view on that in our particular scenario, but that's a great way to do it if you've got those tools. Yes?
You can prioritize based on sales numbers. I mean, you look at the numbers and you figure out, okay, we sell most to the UK, France and Germany, and 5 other countries.
Yeah.
Start with them as the first, like, you know,
Yeah.
box A, box B, box C, and we start figuring out these are the guys that are need the most money, so they get to keep all the language and content, and we start scaling down from the ones that are least used or.
So you prioritise your regions or your countries or your lines of business based on the revenue they're bringing, and you give them more attention, and you let it sort of long tail off. You're absolutely right. You've never known noise quite so loud as these people over here when we did try that. There were rebelliousness. No, you're absolutely right. And again, it makes good business sense, but it's a hard sell. But I think it's a good point. One of the things I put on there and didn't mention was that, because then you come into the whole thing about translations. People were saying to us, we need more translations. And one of their arguments against that idea of prioritization was that, yeah, but if you gave us as much content as you gave them, we'd be able to sell as much. And so they managed to reverse engineer the argument on us, which made it really difficult. But yeah, they're very clever sometimes, salespeople. Okay, I'll tell you what we did then. So I've already revealed we didn't have one single source of content, and please forgive me. So we had to combine the data from different sources, and that's tricky, but possible. And it's important because it's the only way you're going to get the sort of full view. And here's something for you, because our public-facing website has brochures and fact sheets and top 10 stats and things like that, as well as our sales enablement platform. So are you sure that you have something that is actually pulling in what the user is accessing directly? Because you've got to be careful you don't stop producing that content just because the salesperson's not using it. Get me? So you had to bring it in from the website as well. But because we didn't have that DAM or that PIM or that sales enablement platform, we also needed a master list of content, and we had to match them all up. It was hard because they all had different names. But we did work on it. But only once we got the master list of content and then all of the usage against it could we get that zero use analysis of the assets. And it was fascinating. Which assets had no usage at all. We did it over like a 12-month period. And guess what? A lot of the language content had no use at all. So they wanted more, but they weren't even using what we'd already provided them. And then we could look at things like by sales role and by country and by language. But this is my special piece, which is cost per use. Because the cost of producing content matters. If you're trying to get your budget down, what you want to do is spend it wisely. So you might have a really expensive piece of content, like a video, but if it's used 10,000 times, the cost per usage might be a few cents. And that's good. Whereas this brochure over here only cost $10,000 US, but it only got used 10,000 times, and that's a cost per use $1,000. So you can't just go on the cost alone. You have to bring the cost into the usage analysis to get the truth behind it. And because we did that, we were able to identify a potential $3 million US worth of savings per annum by stopping producing the content that was not being used, focusing on the content that was bringing the best ROI, as in cost per use, and then perhaps even redirecting some money to be more innovative elsewhere. Right, final question for you. Learning's been mentioned a lot today, so the L&D team came to us and they were about to launch the largest and most comprehensive remote virtual learning and development program known to Xerox, because this was April 2020 and we were just gone into lockdown, and they wanted to do something for the salespeople that kept them engaged. They designed a 12-week program, 36 webinars, and there were 250 sales reps that were mandated to go through this. What was interesting was that they were doing these live webinars, and they wanted some pre-work through the e-learning. And we suggested if they recorded the webinars, then people could watch them afterwards on demand. So they needed to understand the usage of these 3 different types of engagements, and they needed to know by person whether or not they were actually engaging, who was doing what. So ideas, what would you do? Run away and cry? Because it was a moment.
Sorry, what's the question?
How will you, yes, very fair point, if I haven't explained myself. How would you enable the tracking of the engagement in these 3 disparate deliveries? So this was pre-coursework e-learning, live webinars using Cisco, as it turns out, and then on-demand watching the videos afterwards, stored as it happens on our sales repository. How do we know the engagement? How do we know how many of these 250 sales reps have actually gone through it? And how do we nudge them to keep going? Please.
Well, maybe 3 ideas would be: 1, have unlock content, so you are not able to go to the next content if you don't finish the first one.
Yep.
That is the stick version.
Yep.
The second one would be like analysis, attendees reports analysis, to ensure if they sign in and they show up and they stay at the end and they watch everything.
Yep.
And the old-fashioned style, like testing, quizzes and things like that to improve the learning.
Excellent. So if I remember, we talked about unlocking content, so not allowing them to progress to the next module until they've completed it, the attendance reports from the webinars themselves, and then quizzes to check the learning has landed. Good ideas. What else?
In training, we often speak about hot and cold evaluation, so asking directly the participants, what was your training about?
Yep.
How have you felt? What is your feedback? Directly after the training, so a hot evaluation, and then 1 week or 10 days later having the cold evaluation, so that he reminds the key messages he got out. And
Excellent.
he can even combine this with the feedback of his manager, understanding what has this participant taken away, what has included into his daily work.
Yeah. So. Thank you. So hot and cold feedback from the participants. Hot just after the moment and cold a little bit later to make sure. I'm going to jump. Oh, sorry. Was there one more? Because.
Wall of Fame and Wall of Shame.
Oh.
With the managers, but also some awards for the team that gets to 100% the fastest.
Yeah.
Or the person who has the best quiz scores altogether.
Yeah. Nice. So Wall of Fame, Wall of Shame, and rewards for people who get to the completion fastest. All great ideas. And we did take some of those ideas into our solution. So we automated the pre-event communications and the post-event communications, and the event being the live webinar. So that the pre had all the coursework in it, had the links to the LMS. Yes, we were able to lock content so that they couldn't get to it unless they completed the course, the other course, etc. And in the post events emails, we would put in some of the sort of success stories, some of the feedback, some of the quotes from participants saying how wonderful it was, as well as encouraging people to say, okay, we didn't do it person by person in the post email, but we did it group by group or team by team. I think in this case it was country by country. So you can see that Spain were lagging, and it's like, okay. It's not only the participants, but the manager was getting nervous by then. And then talking to managers, again, it's about dashboards, it's about data for me. Combining that into dynamic dashboards, and of course, because these came from different systems, quite challenging once again to put it together, and the secret sauce being the list of salespeople. Sounds really simple. In a large organisation, it isn't simple to get a list of salespeople, believe you me. But we managed it, and then we were able to say which person had and hadn't engaged in which bit. If I remember rightly, you could either go to the live webinar or watch the replay. You didn't have to do both. And then we just created nice charts. And then the senior managers loved this because they could see it team by team, they could see it country by country, they could reward, they could nudge. So again, we gave the managers the tools to do a lot of the chase-ups ourselves. And then the beauty is that we had a 93% completion rate. Somebody said earlier they managed 100% on their programme, so I'm a bit jealous because I thought this was quite impressive. So I'm sticking with quite impressive. Thank you very much. So I'm going to give you my 5 takeaways for the secrets to scaling sales enablement, and then we're just going to end on our exercise that I gave you at the beginning. You must have realised that I think that data is the driving force behind scaling enablement. When you've got a small team or a small enablement challenge, you can do that in a personalised manual way. This has to be systematic. You must combine your data sources. If you're lucky enough to have everything on one platform, hey-ho, you're already there. But you'll find that, like with the revenue data for the content came from a completely different system. So you do have to bring that together to create the visibility and the stories to tell your stakeholders. And the beauty of that is that if you do that for the line managers, they are the ones who'll make it happen for you. Salespeople do what their managers ask them to do. Don't do random acts of enablement. I'm so glad I've not heard anyone mention that here today, but it used to be a thing. And in some organisation it still is. So please think about it as campaigns. Think of them, think like a marketeer. Automate and personalise every engagement. So I'm just going to give you a moment to absorb that. Take pictures. Can I get in the picture? Thank you. Excellent. So before I say goodbye, let's go back to you. What did you write down as your biggest sales enablement challenge at the moment? And I want you to just put some things next to it. It'll just take me 2 minutes, if I may. I'm really sorry. I'm usually very good at timekeeping. What one idea do you have to overcome this challenge? Though you might have many, but just put one down on the piece of paper, please. Again, big or small. Then think about who you need to work with to make that happen. Is it someone in your team? Is it the sales leadership? Is it the finance director? Is it an external vendor? Put a name down, a named person if possible, please. So what's your first step going to be? I want baby steps here, not fix it. I want email somebody, call somebody, do a bit more research, work on your plan. And make a promise to yourself. Nobody else is going to see this, but you promise yourself you'll have done that first step by when? Okay. Thank you. I've been Catherine Young, and this has been Scaling Sales Enablement. Thank you very much.
All right. We have time for one final question. Enter time, 20 seconds. Just kidding.
That's all right, yeah. No, I can do that.
One final question of today.
What's your biggest challenge?
What's my biggest challenge? I took a phrase that Laura said this morning, which is robust teams. A robust team. I am recruiting at the moment, and finding the right person is my biggest challenge, but it's got to be solved like now. So if you know anyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.